I've got a 2002 Ford Windstar here, and I'm going to be putting a another engine in it. This one here's just completely gone. Here is the engine that's going to be going back in it, and I'm just going to be doing a step-by-step on how to get this engine out and get this new one in. Okay, the first thing I've done here is I've just taken the battery out, and I'm just taking this breather box out, and there's only a couple things to remove. There's a wire connector here, and there's a vacuum hose that goes to the back, and just loosen this clamp and you can just take the whole thing out as one unit. Now you want to make sure as you're going through these, like I've done here, put you a number on it, get you some tape, label every one, so when you go to putting them back, you know exactly without any questions about it. Okay, that was something I didn't mention here. You got these little prongs here that go down into these little rubber grommets. Now you actually have to pry up on those a little bit to get those to pop out. You could also use some WD-40. Now, if you go to take your box apart, I just want to show you, there's like a little groove right here where this little piece sticking up goes into, and it'll only go that way right there. It's just to sure you get it oriented the right way, but if you try to put it together any other way, you will not get that thing to snap together. Okay, and so I'm just going through here and I'm disconnecting some more of these connectors here. And the next thing I'm going to get is this big wire coming from the battery over here going to the alternator. I'm just basically trying to get everything disconnected from the motor so I can, when I go to pull it out, it's not going to be anything attached. I'm not going to take off any more than I have to, obviously. But the next thing, I'm just going to go ahead and another thing I like to do is take pictures of where these cables are. Even though I've got them marked and labeled with numbers, I like to know, exactly how they were laying in here so there's no confusion. Okay, and this nut right here on top of the alternator, that's a 10mm. If you don't have a set of these 6-sided, I would definitely recommend getting some of these. Definitely strip less bolts with these things. Okay, I've only removed a few more things here. They got this brake booster. Just took that hose loose, and then there's this harness right down here. And I just wanted to show you, you've got a 10mm head bolt right there that you just remove, and that comes right off. One thing I just want to mention on these connectors, as you're taking these loose, just definitely, sometimes you can't avoid breaking them because they're so brittle, but just be careful. If you're having to force it too much, you may run the risk of breaking it. I want to show you, I'm getting ready to move these cables. Now the first thing you're going to do to remove this, you have to twist it all the way over that way. It's kind of hard for me to show you and hold this, but you're going to pull the slack on this, and there is a slot down there, if you can see it, and once you pull the slack and pull that around, it just slides right out of that. So it's real easy. And this other cable simply just slides. You just push it this way and it should pop right off. Let me see, I may have to pull it there. That just slides right off. And once you get that done, there's just some little plastic clips right here, and you'll just squeeze them together, and these will slide right through. Just push right through, and then you'll be able to just get those back and out of the way. Same way with this, just squeeze these clamps and push it right through. Okay, the next thing I'm going to be working on is these little air vents and drainage things. And I forgot to mention when I started on this, I'd already had this windshield wiper assembly removed. It's very simple. It's just some snaps and a few bolts, but I'd already had that removed. But the next things, I know these are going to be in the way. I'm going to have to get these out of the way, and you can see that there's like a bolt back in here, and then there's one down on the bottom, if you can see it down in there. And then it looks like may have some more stuff to contend with on this other side, but I'm definitely going to have to get these two out of the way. Okay, and I'm just using a long extension to get down in here, making it easier to get to this bolt. And these are 11 millimeters, by the way. I done took that top one off of right here, and just an 11 millimeter. Okay, now once you get that bottom one completely loose, you'll want to take your magnet and get it out of there so it doesn't fall. Once you get those two bolts loose, it's going to pull right up and out of there, and there's just some vacuum connectors right here. I'm just going to disconnect this one right here, and I'll mark that so I know where it goes later. And this is just going to come completely out of here. Okay, now once I got my vacuum hose labeled, I just took those nuts that held that box on there and I put them right back on those studs, so I'm not having to hunt for those later. Okay, now I'm going to remove this drainage box here, and it's held on by a 10 millimeter. I'm just going to use a long extension to get back in there and make that easier to get to, so I'll go ahead and remove that now. Okay, what I found was this piece didn't want to slide up past this AC line down here, so I just simply disconnected this top piece from it, and I think it'll be enough out of the way not to have to mess with, but if not, I'll deal with it later. Okay, the next thing I'm going to remove is going to be this harness right here and this ground right here. Okay, and I got those two removed. This was a 10 millimeter, and this down here, this bolt was an 8 millimeter. Okay, there was a stud right here with a nut on it that holds the harness right here, and there's also this little snap-in plastic clip right here that's holding this down. Okay, the next thing I've done, I've separated these two vacuum hoses and marked these, and basically, like I said, I'm just getting everything disconnected from the van to the engine, and I'm just working my way down, you know, going from top to bottom, getting all these connectors and wires. And I know it's going to seem time consuming going through here and labeling these things, but you'll be glad you done it later, because it's going to cut down on any confusion. You'll know where everything goes without getting something mixed up, and you know, it's going to be quicker of a process putting this all back together. Okay, now I'm going to be disconnecting these fuel lines, and they're held in these little this little clip thing here, just kind of keeps them together. And if you're not familiar with these, it kind of just, you push it to one side or the other, and it just kind of pops out there, and you can unloosen it. Just be careful, don't break it. And we're going to be disconnecting them here. Now, before I disconnect it, what I'll do, you know, make sure, get you a rag or something to put over there before you pop that thing off there. You know, have you some safety goggles. First thing you do is you pop off this little safety retaining clip, and it just goes on there like that. And it just, like I say, you just push it, just pops right off. Just push it straight back, it pops. So I've got it on there, and you can just give it a little push, or get something, a tool or whatever, and just push it right off. It's kind of hard to do with one hand, but I just pushed it off a second ago. Okay, after some searching, I found my fuel line disconnect tools here. Now, if you don't have one of these kits, just go to, your local parts store, and they'll have these. And you just go through there and just find the one that fits, and it just pops on there. Like I said, I'm going to get ready to take this one off. I'm just going to put a rag over it so I don't have fuel spraying back on me. Okay, there's the first one off. You can see how easy it slides off. Okay, and there's the back one off, and you can see I had to switch over to a smaller size for that one. Okay, now all I've done with my fuel lines is put a rag and a rubber band around just to keep them protected and keep a little bit of stuff out of there. Okay, the next thing that I went ahead and going to remove here is this battery box. I know it's going to get in the way sooner or later. Just got a bolt here and here. Put some WD-40 or PB Blaster on there. It's a 10mm, and then we can get this whole thing out. Looks like I got a connector right here, and maybe another little cable I'll take loose. Okay, now this little box here was attached to that, and I found it easier because I had a little cable on it just to go ahead and remove the two 10mm bolts and that were holding it, and just set it aside. Okay, right now I'm just draining the coolant out, and you'll notice with that battery box out of the way, that opened up all that room where I could just reach down from the top and get that loose. And on this one, used a 3/4 6-sided. I like these, less chance of stripping, more especially since that's plastic. Just got that draining for now. I'm going to get the coolant out. You want to also take your cap off over there so it'll drain. And I'm just going to get this coolant out here and probably start taking some of these coolant hoses and stuff off next. And I don't know if they've got the original radiator on here, but the spout's oriented in a weird direction there, so it's kind of wanting to go everywhere, but I may just take that plug completely out here in a minute. Okay, now I've just gone and removed this this upper hose here. Now when you go to taking these loose, they usually need a little persuasion, but this one back here was even stuck so much that I simply couldn't get it to come loose, so I just took the thermostat housing off. You've got a couple of 8mm little bolts right there holding it, and just got in there with an extension. Just be careful taking those out. Either use a magnet or get your hand ready when you get them loose so you're not spending half the day hunting for them. And like I said, also I like to mark it, which way it went, so no confusion. Okay, now what I've done is taken my belt off here, and I don't know if I can get a good image of this, but the tensioner is right down in here in the back, and it's a 13mm head on it. And I tried to had to get a helper because I couldn't get it myself. I had to pull the tension from the bottom and have somebody remove the belt from the top. But anyways, your tensioner is the one that's below this power steering pump on the pulley, right down here in the back. And the reason I went ahead and took the belt off, because what I want to do now, I'm going to start by removing this power steering pump. I just want to try to remove it as a whole if I can, and try to pull it out of the way so I'm not having to drain the fluid and disconnect more than I have to. The same thing I'm going to do when I come to the AC compressor. I'm going to try to disconnect from the engine and the brackets and simply just move it out of the way enough to where I can just pull the engine out without having to do anything else more. Now if I have to, I can disconnect it. I think this system's been discharged anyway, so no big deal, but I just try to not disconnect more than I have to. So I'm going to go ahead and get started on removing this power steering pump here first. Okay, so I'm going to have to wind up taking at least this bottom line off here. What I realized was that this bolt heads, the line's right over the top of it, so even if there was enough room there, these bolts here had so much torque on them that there's no way my little bitty wrench would have been able to get them loose without breaking it. So I'm just going to go ahead and remove this line. I've got a pan under there, and you know, I'll just have to make do here. Hopefully I won't lose all of my fluid. I'll just reconnect it once I get that bolt out and see what I need to do from there.